Have you ever seen a child sitting in front of a birthday cake with candles burning low, but no one there to sing for her, no one there to clap when she makes a wish? Stay with me until the end, because this story will touch your heart in ways you never imagined. And before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel, The Wild West Hearts, because we bring you real stories of kindness, humanity, and unexpected miracles. The restaurant was lively that evening, full of laughter, clinking glasses, and cheerful chatter. But in one corner, tucked away near the window, sat a girl who looked like she didn't belong to that joyful scene. Her hair was neatly braided, a little bow placed carefully on top, and in front of her sat a birthday cake with 10 small candles flickering uncertainly in the dim light. She was paralyzed from the waist down, her fragile frame leaning against the wheelchair that held her. Her eyes held both innocence and sorrow, like a child waiting for something she already knew wouldn't come. The waiters glanced toward her table occasionally, whispering among themselves. Some pitied her, others simply shook their heads. Who celebrates a birthday alone? The truth was, her father was the CEO of a giant company, one of those men who lived on phone calls, meetings, and handshakes rather than hugs. He had arranged for the cake to be delivered, instructed the staff to make it special, but he wasn't there. He was across town, locked in yet another boardroom, negotiating another deal. To him, her birthday was a date on a calendar, but to her, it was the one day she longed to feel like any other child. Her tiny fingers tapped lightly against the edge of the table as she stared at the candles. She whispered softly to herself, "Happy birthday, Mia," and her voice cracked, tears slipping down her cheeks. The flame trembled like it could sense her loneliness. At another table nearby sat a single father, David, with his 7-year-old son, Ethan. They had come to the restaurant as a treat after a long week. Money was always tight for David, he worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table, but tonight, he wanted his son to feel special, to enjoy a simple meal together. Ethan noticed the girl first. He tugged at his father's sleeve and whispered, "Daddy, why is that girl alone? Isn't it her birthday?" David looked over, his heart sinking at the sight. He saw the small cake, the lonely child, and the way her shoulders shook as she tried to hide her tears. Something inside him ached, because he knew what it felt like to be forgotten, to feel invisible in a world that rushes past. He had promised himself that Ethan would grow up learning compassion, the kind that moves you to act, not just to feel. He leaned toward his son, smiled softly, and said, "Sometimes people need us to remind them they're not alone. Do you want to help me?" Ethan's eyes lit up with eagerness. David stood, walked over to the girl's table with Ethan beside him, and spoke gently, his voice full of kindness, "Can we join you?" The girl lifted her tear-streaked face in surprise. No one had ever asked her that before. Her eyes widened, then softened, as though a door inside her heart had been cracked open. For the first time that evening, she smiled. From that moment, something magical began to unfold. Chapter 2. The candles on Mia's cake still burned, their wax slowly dripping into little pools, but now the light seemed brighter because she wasn't sitting alone anymore. David pulled up a chair, and Ethan plopped into the seat beside him, grinning at Mia as if they had always been friends. "Hi," Ethan said cheerfully. "I'm Ethan. How old are you today?" Mia wiped her eyes quickly, embarrassed by her tears, but the warmth in their voices gave her courage. 10, she whispered, her smile timid but real. 10. Ethan gasped dramatically. "That's double digits. That means you're officially amazing." His childish enthusiasm made her giggle, the sound ringing out like music she hadn't played in years. David leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. "So, Mia," he said gently, "are we going to sing, or are we just going to let these candles burn down all night?" Her eyes lit up. "You'll sing with me?" "Of course," David replied. "Every birthday deserves a song." So right there, in the middle of a crowded restaurant where strangers stared in shock and waiters stopped mid-step, a single father and his son began singing "Happy Birthday" at the top of their lungs. The room grew quiet, then slowly, tables around them joined in. One by one, voices filled the air until the whole restaurant was singing for Mia. She closed her eyes, pressed her hands together, and made a wish with all her heart before blowing out the candles. The applause that followed felt like a warm blanket wrapping around her loneliness. For the first time, she wasn't just the CEO's daughter in a wheelchair, she was a girl loved, celebrated, and seen. David cut the cake into slices, handing one to Ethan, one to Mia, and even offered some to nearby tables. The simple act of sharing turned strangers into friends. Ethan chatted endlessly, telling Mia about his school, his dreams of becoming a pilot, and asking about her favorite books. Her laughter came more easily now, echoing like tiny bells through the restaurant. And then, just as the night seemed perfect, the CEO himself walked in. His polished shoes clicked against the floor, his expensive suit catching the restaurant lights. He stopped dead in his tracks when he saw his daughter surrounded by laughter, a half-eaten cake on the table, and a single father with his son sitting by her side. For a moment, guilt shadowed his face. He had missed everything, the candles, the song, the joy. He opened his mouth to speak, but Mia looked up at him with teary eyes and said, "Daddy, they made it the best birthday ever." The words pierced him deeper than any boardroom negotiation ever could. He realized then that his empire, his deals, his endless meetings, none of it mattered compared to the little girl smiling in front of him. David stood politely, ready to excuse himself, but the CEO held out his hand. "Thank you," he said, his voice heavy with sincerity. "You gave my daughter something I couldn't, and I'll never forget it." David simply nodded, smiling humbly. All she needed was someone to sit beside her. That night, as the CEO drove his daughter home, he kept glancing at her laughter-filled face in the rearview mirror. He knew he had been given a second chance, a reminder that love isn't measured by success, but by presence. And as for Mia, she would never forget the day a stranger's kindness turned her lonely birthday into a memory she'd carry forever. So remember, dear viewers, sometimes the smallest act, just asking, "Can we join you?" can change a life. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel, The Wild West Hearts. Because every week, we share stories that remind us of the power of kindness, compassion, and love.